Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chris Hannay, independent business reporter for the Globe and Mail. I would like to thank all of you for coming. It's wonderful to be back in our event space again. I'd also like to extend a special welcome to those joining us virtually. We're pleased to have audience members joining us from all across Canada for this hybrid event. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which the Globe and Mail headquarters is situated is the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Métis Nation, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. The Globe and Mail has partnered with CIBC, Salesforce, and Meridian Credit Union to bring you today's event. Over the course of the afternoon, we will be talking with entrepreneurs about what they are doing to engage customers, win talent, and regain financial footing. We have several Globe and Mail journalists on deck to moderate today. They include Vanmala Subramaniam, our Future of Work reporter, and Sarah Efron, an editor in the opinion section who previously oversaw our small business coverage. We also have Josh O'Kane closing out today's event with a keynote interview. I'll be taking the stage again shortly to moderate a panel on success stories, but first I'd like to invite Michelle Way, Vice President of Business Banking Distribution at CIBC, to say a few words. Welcome, Michelle.
We are very proud to be representing and the presenting sponsor at this year's annual Globe and Mail Small Business Summit. It feels significant that we are here today, and especially that many of us are able to be here together in person. We know that no matter the industry, every small Canadian business opens their doors with the ambition to be leaders. Our diversity and entrepreneurial spirit are not only the foundation of our economy, but a barometer for our collective well-being. At CIBC Business Banking, that means investing in knowledge, a team of experts who support our entrepreneurs managing short-term pressures while also chasing their greatest ambitions. Our business advisors support entrepreneurs through all life stages and journeys, managing payments, cash flow and tax, business financing, and also business succession planning. Most of you in this room or joining us online live and breathe small business every day. And we likely share a deeply fraught experience of the past 2 years. Our time has been spent not only worrying for our families and friends, our health and our communities, but also for the livelihood of our clients. So what does that mean? What does it mean to grow your business in this modern market? We will find out together by sharing our experiences, our passion, and as we take steps that grow with events like this one. To that end, we offer our support to every small business client and also to everyone here at the Globe and Mail. Whether you're brand new or a big established business, all businesses need great partners. So I'll leave you with this thought. At CIBC, we want to make your ambitions real, and we believe that building a business is about building relationships. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here today, and I'd also like to thank the annual Globe and Mail Small Business Summit for your partnership. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone, and enjoy the video. Thank you.
All right. Discussion underway. We have an inspiring group of business leaders and entrepreneurs here to talk about their success stories with us. So let's welcome them on stage. Joining us today, we have Emily Mills, founder of How She Hustles. We also have Al Ayubzadeh, the founder, CEO, and creative director of Zvel. Alex Barati, the founder of Touch Bistro. and Shannon Jiangiani, the Vice President of Commercial Sales at Salesforce Canada. All right. Thanks very much, everybody, for being here today. And for those of you in our live audience, we'll have an opportunity to ask questions towards the end of the discussion. For everybody online, if you have a question, please type the questions in the Q&A box. So why don't we get started by having each of you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do. So we'll start with you, Emily.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much. It's so good to see humans. Yeah, I know. I'm not the only one. So I'm thrilled to just tell you a very little bit about my company. We started about 12 years ago. How She Hustles began as essentially a production company for events. We did events for diverse women, racialized women, women of color, whatever acronym you use. We really tried to prioritize making sure that Black and brown women were the norm and not the exception. Of course, we know over the last 2 years, the death of George Floyd, et cetera, changed the landscape, and it's great to see more and more brands prioritizing that. But when we started, I'm going to be honest with you, it wasn't really a thing. Since then, we've evolved to do much more than events. So now I do events. I also do some marketing consulting for big brands who are trying to reach more women like me. I also speak. And then the last thing I do is I love creating content to amplify the voices of women of color. Thanks.
All right, thanks. And Elle?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Really good to be here. I think the last time I was here was for Yara Society, and I was up here too, so really glad to be back. I'm Elle. I'm the founder and creative director of Zavelle, the fashion accessories brand, and our mission is to upend traditional fashion narratives about men and women. I like to say, walk how you want. It's not just a company tagline, it's who I am. It's all, everything that I've done in my life, and I'm happy to be sharing about that later on in this panel.
Hello, everyone. Also delighted to be in person, live people, not just on the Zoom call. My name is Alex Barati. I'm the founder of Touch Bistro. I was a founder and CEO up until about a year ago. Touch Bistro is 10 years old, headquartered here in Toronto. We have 23,000 restaurants across about 140 countries, and 450 of our staff right here. Just 8-minute Uber ride over here. And I started the company here, but actually I got the idea for the company when I was living in Turks and Caicos, and I was just over a casual conversation with a sushi bar owner, and the idea was born after, he came to me one day and he said, how do I take orders from the patio and send them to the kitchen? And I said, I don't know, how do you do that? And so that simple conversation started a company the size that it is today, and we've raised over $300 million in capital, and we're not so little anymore. So it's just amazing.
All right, and Shannon?
Hey everyone, nice to meet you all. I work for a company called Salesforce. We are a platform that helps businesses scale and grow. My role over there is I lead our small business sales teams across Canada. Part of what I love is engaging with SMB leaders and constantly finding ways, or creative ways, and more importantly, I actually come out inspired on how to lead and how we could help them scale their businesses and grow.
All right, thank you very much. So for the first question I wanted to throw out there, obviously the pandemic has been very tough for a lot of businesses, but one of the kind of paradoxes almost of the pandemic is that it was also a very successful time for some businesses, particularly some tech companies. Of course, not every business can be a unicorn. It can be worth $1 billion, and it can be tough sometimes to compare yourselves to some of those stars. So maybe we can just talk, we'll go through each of the panelists. You can talk a little bit about, what does success mean to you, and how do you sort of define success for yourself to make it more manageable? Emily, do you want to start?
For me, success is a holistic. It really has to be holistic. I'm a mom. I'm very proud to have soon-to-be 8- and 9-year-old boys at home, and supporting 3 generations of Caribbean and African families here in Toronto. So for me, success is being able to pick up my kids a couple days a week and see them thrive and flourish, while also being able to do what I do. Work with all kinds of brands. I've had a chance to work with Team CIBC, for example, and the Globe in different capacities. And so I think particularly over the last 2 years, it's been about, sure, making money, but also being able to be present here as a person. And I would say the last thing is being able to give voice to a lot of the voices that have been waiting to be heard for a long time. The pandemic created a massive wave of big brands that were like, we know we're passionate about reaching markets we haven't reached before, serving customers we haven't served before, but we don't always know how to do that. And so I think part of my success is, okay, let's have a conversation from, let's say, a marketing standpoint or a content standpoint or event standpoint to figure out how to engage those audiences so that we can help other businesses grow and other entrepreneurs evolve. So that's been a real point of success for me.
Okay. And Elle?
Yeah, for me, success is walking how I want, and it's always been that. You know, as ambitious of a person I am, as competitive as of a person I am, it's never been about just, you know, achieving external success. I had a career in finance. I'm, you know, running a fashion company, and actually, because, you know, we're here with small business, I want to tell you a story. When we were actually doing this panel prep, you know, that day I did not feel very successful, and I had just made an announcement saying that, you know, to our customers that my store was, you know, locked out. And for all the lawyers in this room and anyone, you know, listening online, I'm only sharing what my lawyer approved, so it's nothing extra. But, you know, and so, you know, I struggled on that call internally. And then, you know, after the call, I slapped myself and I asked myself, you know, what is really success? Success is me having, you know, paid rent for 3 years to, you know, the previous landlord, never defaulting. Success is me never owing anything to anyone. Success is that, you know, I had customers I love and I wanted to email. Success is, you know, my employees that I'm worried about. And success is, you know, everything that I've done before this and everything that I'm going to do, you know, before that. It's not, you know, just one thing. It's like, as Viktor Frankl said, success is like chasing happiness. You know, the more you chase it, the more miserable you get. Yeah. So that's why I say, you know, walking, you know, how I want, because, you know, I could get up one day and just decide that success means a whole other things for me. So, you know, today it means I'm here amongst, you know, entrepreneurs. I respect, you know, meeting Pamela, who just told me she's here because she wanted to hear from me, so hope I don't disappoint her. And it's, you know, celebrating all of you who, you know, either have small businesses or want to have small businesses. So that's success for me today.
Alex?
We obviously had a miserable couple of years, but I think it's safe to say, and I think we can all agree, that the people who took it the worst was the hospitality and restaurant industry. They had it really bad. And I remember same thing, having to wake up one day to having to shut our offices down. Like, I remember flying from New York on March the 11th, and March 13th, I closed the office. 600 people, everybody got to go home. But our thoughts weren't so much turned to us. As my biggest concern was our clients in our restaurants, because we had, we're sitting there in our management meeting thinking, what's doomsday going to look like? So we thought it was going to be no new sales, because there's no restaurants are going to be opening during this time. And we thought the worst thing that's going to happen is 50% attrition. So 50% of our customers we feared would go out of business. And so our focus actually went from, or success used to be, how many new restaurants can we light up every month? And we were lighting up, 300 on a bad month to 700 new restaurants a month, which was incredible. And all of a sudden, that wasn't our barometer of success anymore. Success was, how do we keep our existing customers alive? That's the most important thing. And so we pivoted, and we started we launched a bunch of free tools. We gave them free online ordering, because we knew people couldn't go to restaurants anymore. So it's like, how do we still keep them revenue? So free online ordering, we did free reservations, because contact tracing became important. For those that weren't fully closed, they had 50% capacity limits. You had to know everybody in the restaurant. So suddenly, reservations became a very hot topic. And then loyalty. We started giving them more tools for free, just so that they could remain in business. And that worked. We ended up still growing 15% and what was thought would be zero growth. And now it looks like the pandemic is behind us, and as we're coming out of it, we can go back to expanding our business. But we had gone from 50% year-over-year growth for 10 years to all of a sudden, and nobody around. And I'm sure that'll be a hot topic is how we're all suffering from staffing requirements, and like every industry, not just the restaurant industry.
And Shannon.
Yeah, my lens on this is slightly different because we're working with a lot of SMBs, and just in conversations with leaders, I think the theme that came out or stands out to me the most is during adversity, businesses are exposed, so strengths are highlighted, right? So if you've got the tools, the resources, you're going to be able to sustain no matter what is thrown your way. And usually if you got weaknesses, those are exposed. And I think a lot of what I saw was a lot of resilience, a lot of organizations and businesses adapting to this new norm or the new environment that they were forced or challenged with. A lot of the conversations that we were having pre-pandemic were around innovation and technology. How do you engage with your customers? How do you give your employees access to your database or your customer database virtually anywhere? And I think the pandemic almost accelerated a lot of these initiatives, right? So a lot of the businesses who had tools were more successful, and they doubled down on it. And in fact, an interesting stat that we've got an SMB trend report that we put out each year. 85% of SMBs today are using some form of technology and have a digital presence, right? And 95% of those are ones who doubled down during the pandemic, right? So that was a huge aha moment when we saw how the businesses were adapting and adjusting. And the last thing I feel that was truly incredible to see was just how the communities came together, right? There was a lot of campaigns on going local, supporting each other, right? The governments came out with programs to help small businesses deal with these tough situations. And it was just amazing to see from a human standpoint how folks band together and really leaned in to support one another during that time.
All right. Well, maybe going off this, we can talk a little bit about some of the ways the pandemic changed things. Because obviously, as you were saying, with hospitality in particular, a lot of businesses had to change the services that they were offering. Their change to their approach to customer service had to change during the pandemic. And so, as this event is an example of, we sort of some businesses are doing more of a hybrid kind of experience. So, I wonder if you could share some of your experiences or insights, sort of navigating that.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was a huge change. When the pandemic hit, my company, How She Hustles, we were in the midst of planning our 10-year celebration. I mean, we were known for, imagine this entire room with mostly young, Black, Indigenous, Hispanic, South Asian women networking, many of them early stage small business owners, buzzing, 200, 300, 400 women. And then all of a sudden we couldn't do that. And we were getting ready to do our biggest one. It was a huge disappointment in a way, and yet there was such a silver lining. We ended up going online very early on. As soon as the pandemic hit, we started doing online content. And to Shannon's point, our community had in many ways already been interacting through social media. That's kind of how She Hustles started. Unlike a lot of other traditional women's networks, it wasn't membership based and then people went to an event. We started essentially off a Facebook post and then evolved. So we could lean back onto what we already knew, which is, hey, you guys know that we've always been using social media to connect, so we're gonna go back. And that became a great opportunity for us. We did an online event, and I'd like to say it was probably one of the most successful ones that we've done. We had everything from people dancing soca and calypso in their living room to hearing from thought leaders on how to navigate, personal branding, to a mocktail session. It was such a great opportunity to use technology to connect. So I think yes, there were definitely challenges, but I think for those brands that kind of already had strategies that worked for them, to Shannon's point, it was definitely about doubling down, and we were fortunate to be one of those brands.
Do you feel like you're going to stay with some of that stuff you started doing?
My people want to see each other, you know, like I have to say, I know that I want to invite you all, like How She Hustles are events, people go in and they hug and they cry and they fist pump, and like there's an energy to it, you know. People come out with their Ankara from West Africa, and we serve ginger beer from Jamaica, and like we have a female DJ playing hip hop. You want to come yet? Like that's the vibe, right? And then people talk about business and their families and how to work with each other, and you can replicate some of that online, definitely. You can see it in the comments, you can see it in the social content, but there is nothing like that human touch. So I think probably like your amazing Globe Events team, hybrid is going to be it.
Good. It does sound fun. Elle, yeah, what about you?
Yeah. So I'm in the physical goods business. I, design the most beautiful shoes and handbags. I'm wearing these today. And I make them in Italy, and then we ship them all around the world. But my belief to, selling has always been like, we want to be everywhere our customers are. This has been the same since the beginning. This will always be. So trunk shows, physical stores, online, social media, sending a stylist to someone's house. That's, virtual fittings. We've done that before the pandemic, and, we will do that again, and we'll come up with new ways of doing. But I had my own internal crisis before the pandemic, and I was really, I'm always asking myself, what is it that, why should Zivelle exist other than, changing the way women and men are portrayed in fashion? And before the pandemic, I decided to change our product mix. I used to do much more dressier styles, and I wanted to be in, in people's weekends. I wanted to walk to the park and see people wearing Zivelles, because up until that point, everybody, saved Zivelles for their special occasions. So I'd already decided to make some moves before the pandemic. And in fact, the first year of the pandemic was my most creatively liberating and actually, way in every way. The first shoes that I made is our bestseller. It's called V, named after Viktor Frankl, having purpose in life. When we couldn't sell shoes, I moved a whole bunch of things because we had to close our office. And we were building out our first physical space. So I moved everything into my showroom. And because no one was buying shoes, we came up with an initiative called Healthcare Heroes. And we shipped out 400 plus, I stopped counting after that, 400 shoes to healthcare workers in Canada and the United States. And I want to say something that you're going to like. When we first started getting nominations, and I had the privilege of sitting on a hospital foundation board, so I knew some people in the healthcare space. But I looked at all the nomination names, and it was the usual kind of Sarah Smith, and it doesn't matter who I asked. And then it really pissed me off. So we wanted to celebrate all kinds of women. And I was only making women's shoes at that time, so that was my focus. So I reached out to doctors, nurses, support workers on Instagram, to different women of color in the States, saying like, hey, we're doing this, you don't know who I am, but can you just nominate some people because we want to celebrate them? And kept doing this, and then we kind of got a balance. So I'm really proud of that. That's what we did. We did it in Toronto when Toronto went down in lockdown again. So I think we've given over 600 pairs of shoes and counting. Just recently, I was outraged like everyone in Canada about what's happening in Ukraine. So over a set of 3 days, we gave all our profits to small charities actively working in Ukraine. So these are the kind of things that move us and what I consider success. And my company, compared to Alex's, is self-funded, which means if I don't sell shoes and bags, I cannot pay people. If I don't say,
I have the same problem.
you have the same. No, I mean, no, I know you have the same problem. You know, no, you just have to, you know. But you know, I cannot. And love CIBC, but you know, banks also will not give you, you know, $5 extra on your credit card when you need it. So so all of these things, I'm really, really proud that we gave out, you know, so many shoes. And that I'm here, you know, smiling and laughing. But I still love you, Alex.
So I'm going to give you a different perspective. I mean, I could certainly tell you countless things that we went through when the pandemic hit, but and we were all sort of talking into the green room. I didn't. You told me later. Apologies, but we were saying this. So, you know, where do all of us go to celebrate a special occasion? You know, like honeymoon, anniversary, promotion. Where do we all go? We all go to restaurants, right? You don't come home and go, honey, you got a promotion? That's great. We're going to Uber Eats tonight, right? Right?
Don't say that too.
That's Friday. That's
Yes,
not date night, right? It was, and I'm very close to my customers. Like I'm very passionate about. I love going to restaurant openings, and I was not a foodie until I did this for a living, and then I realized how difficult it was to run a restaurant and, you know, make delicious meals for everybody. And I've been fortunate to have incredible different cuisines all over the world. But it was very hard for me to see what now became my closest friends, who, you know, forced to shut down. We're running effectively, and I hate this term, ghost kitchens, they call them, where they're cooking and they couldn't, you know, because we still have to eat, all of us. I certainly am not blessed with being able to cook, so it was a basic human necessity. We all have to eat. We're all trying to get food done, and again, because of the pandemic, I was saying how, you know, so restaurants would open and they have supply problems. They have to buy all their food and everything, and oh no, you got to close a month later. So all the food they just bought goes to waste. You got to send everybody home. They're all on unemployment. Then a month later, oh, you get to open up 50% capacity. Okay, great. Well, again, the food doesn't make itself. You have to order all the ingredients and supplies. They couldn't get them, couldn't get staff because half of them had COVID. You know, and we're all, I mean, I know everyone in this room is having supply chain problems with one thing or another. And why? That's because the people aren't there to build whatever it is we're all trying to buy, whether it's shoes or create content or produce meals, right? We're all having the same problem. So it's amazing how trickle down. The most important resource that any business has is its people. And if you can't get them into the building to make or do or create, you know, and yeah, some aspects of our business became better. Like our programmers became super productive because, you know, they could work till all hours of the evening. They didn't have to come in or out. They could get up 5 minutes before they had to be at work and jump on a Zoom call. I'm certainly guilty of that too. But the collaboration is gone. You know, and that's what I miss the most is we were talking about if often I'd be walking down the hall and someone would say, I'm having trouble closing this customer, can you give me a hand? And so jump on the call and someone go, oh, I just learned something. Or walking over to the next person and say, I'm having a difficulty with this task. I don't think this works right in the program. Can you help me? That's gone. Everything is siloed and everything is, and you know, we had all the toys and video games and all that to make people's lives more enjoyable at work, and I used to love that. You know, walk down the office and it didn't bother me one bit to see, you know, a group of people playing video games for an hour because I knew that was a downtime they needed, and then they go right back to work, and then they'd stay late, and then if you stayed past 7, then I bought everybody pizza or dinner or somebody, right? And then that was my pleasure to do that. So all that, you know, gone, disappeared, right? That was certainly difficult. Same thing. We've been building a new office for 3 years. And we were supposed to move in June of 2000, and we take possession to an empty office. No people, no big party, no celebration, no nothing. It was disappointing, right? And it was disappointing on the staff because we all looked forward to going from, you know, little office, suddenly our corporate headquarters and empty. And it's not just us. I was just saying that, like Apple's having the same problem. It's all over the news. People are quitting at Apple because they're now asking people to come back to work. They're like, ooh, that's just too much for me to bear right now, right? So.
And Shannon, are there maybe some insights too from the report that Salesforce did?
Yeah. So over the last year, 5 in every 10 SMBs invested in some form of technology, right? And I would say 75% of those executives who made that decision to invest in technology truly believe it's the foundation and it will be fundamental to their success for years and years to come, right? And I think the one thing that we've learned in over the past 2 years is change inevitable. It's going to happen. A lot of us have changed jobs, changed probably where we live, changed the way we go to work or communicate with colleagues, and that's not changing. We're talking about, same thing with Alex and I were talking about this before, this is here to stay, right? So there's going to be an in-person type of environment where folks feel comfortable and want that camaraderie and want to collaborate with peers and come into work. But there's going to be a handful of folks that we hire that want that hybrid environment. They want to be able to work remote. They're going to want to be maybe working from Niagara Falls, right? And that's not going anywhere. And I think as leaders or as business owners, we have to be mindful on just what our people want, because it's very easy to have a disengaged team and not be aware of it if you've got this hybrid environment, right? So I think in again, having conversations with leaders, I think folks are over-indexing to make sure that there are some level of experiences. They're finding creative ways to bring people back, whether it's once a month, whether it's a team agreement with your team to say, hey, let's all celebrate this milestone together. Maybe it's that 1-year anniversary as a group. Whatever it is, I think there's ways to start bringing those experiences to make sure you are aware of how your people are doing constantly. And then also one step further, it's very easy for someone else to hire an employee and just pay them more money because you don't have those levels of engagement with your people. So again, a lot of what people want today is development, right? So I've heard executives invest in courses outside of work to keep their employees motivated, to keep them up-leveling their skills so that they feel more productive and more valuable at work. So these are just some small things that I think all of us should be mindful of, because it's not going anywhere, and it is something top of mind for a lot of leaders.
Can I add to that, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to Alex and Shannon's point, yes, I know there are a lot of businesses who are still facing major challenges around staffing, but I would say it was kind of a waterfall of joy for my brand, and because there were so many creatives, especially creatives who were moms, or who were from racialized communities, who just were looking for the flexibility, gig economy, and really looking for the opportunity to scale up what they did. So for example, I've got Terry and Leslie at the back. They're amazing creatives that I've worked with on photography and videography. We've traveled all across the country together. They've done international work. And so I see more and more of that kind of ecosystem evolving, right? Where people are looking for not only flexibility in their work, but also a values alignment. And that's not to say that you have to be a small business to have a certain kind of value, or you have to be a woman of color to have a certain kind of value. But I think people are just unapologetic during the pandemic to say, I want to work in an environment where people understand what it's like to be nursing my kid and trying to cut this promo. I want to be in an environment where I am working with a whole bunch of women or non-binary entrepreneurs, and where it's not a second thought, where people are going to put in the time to not just do a land acknowledgement or have a DEI strategy, but we can see that you're walking it by who you hire, by the way that you work, by the composition of your team. So that has, I think, attracted a certain, an incredible array of talent to some of the work we've done.
All right. Well, as someone who's, my wife and I had another kid during the pandemic, so I also appreciate some of that flexibility.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll go to audience questions. So I say that to give you a heads up to think of one, so that when I come to the audience, you have something collectively. All right. So yes, my question. So when we were talking a bit before the panel started, I think one thing that we were really excited to talk about was maybe how to say no to opportunities. Because sometimes when you're an entrepreneur, particularly if you have a pretty lean team, if you say yes to everything, you're going to be overloaded and you're probably not going to do everything very well. So what's your kind of strategy about sort of maybe picking your moments or picking the right opportunities for you? Emily, do you want to start?
You know what? I'm going to give somebody else a chance to start first.
Sure. Al?
Yeah, I think the best way to know what to say yes to or say no to is really know yourself and know what your end goal in life is. So even if you don't have your perfect business right now, but what is it you want to do before you're dead? And I know it sounds morbid, but that's the way that I always think. So it's very easy then for me to say yes to certain opportunities and no. I mean, in the most basic sense, I design shoes for men and women who are independent, they're intelligent, they don't need a massive logo to, show the world how amazing they are. They have confidence. So that's the kind of shoes that I design. So by choice, my shoes are not flashy. They don't have a purple sole. Purple is my color. I won't mention the other thing. They don't have a purple sole. My handbags don't have things. So you're not going to be assaulting someone when you walk in the room with the logo, some people do. And I won't make 5-inch, 4-inch heels. I'm not going to compete for those red carpet events because I'm not going to pay some A, B, or C, millions of dollars to wear my shoes. And it's very easy for me to say no to. In the beginning, when I started the company, over 5 years ago, I wasn't from the fashion industry. I wanted to make it. I wanted to get shoes and bags and everything on all kinds of fancy people. And I did make, 4-inch heels that none of my customers bought. They maybe few of them bought, 5-inch heels, but I made those and every famous person wore that. So now, I guess it's through experience as well, I just will say no to those opportunities. The other thing is that in the very beginning, the only amount of money I've raised is only $200,000 ever, and that's not even like my one production run to make one style. I had, and those angel investors came from people who, one customer from Germany who, came and had lunch with me, and things worked out. Is I said no to money from two people, I won't say, the gender, they, were writing a really big check for me. And just through the interactions, something didn't feel right. Now, this is 5 years ago. I was in the shittiest little office that you can think of. I mean, nobody even knew my name. Nobody even knew, they still don't know, but still just imagine what it was 5 years ago. And these two people were asking kind of questions that they just didn't, sit right with me. Am I going to have kids, or am I signing a prenup with? Actually, I was now I'm married to the guy, but he was my boyfriend at the time. No, not this person, not this person.
Asking questions.
No. But we used to share an office space. So I'm married to a serial entrepreneur, and he's fantastic. And he was sort of sitting outside, and we weren't engaged or whatever, but these people knew that we were together. And so they said, are you going to sign a prenup, all this stuff? And I was like, hey, I just said it out. I said, lady, whatever. Now everyone knows. I was like, hey, lady, I'm not Elon Musk to be going around sleeping with people and getting people pregnant. God bless Elon Musk. But it's I don't need to be signing a prenup, and that's just not even something that I want somebody to tell me. So it was just I just decided to say no. That was very easy. It's having values. Every person has values. Every person has to eat. Every person has to drink. Every person has to clothe themselves. That's why I like both our businesses so much. And it's just know who you are, know what you want in the end, and say no to things that are not going to, make you feel good about yourself at night when you're sleeping. Not on social media, but at night when you're sleeping, nobody knows what's in your head. You need to feel good about yourself.
Alex?
So definitely saying no is for me, it's definitely the hardest thing, because I'm a type A, I want to do everything, and opportunity comes, I want to take it. But yeah, there's lots of things that we've had to say, is this ultimately where we see the business going? Because some of them are lucrative and you want to do them, but some of them are strategic and you might want to do them. But people will say to me, well, would you like to, or you do easy one, or you only do restaurants. We only do restaurants because we want to do restaurants the best way possible. Well, why don't you do retail? We don't want to do retail. Well, why not? Because we want to be the best of breed. We don't want to be a jack of all trades, and And there's Shopify for that. I'm not about to compete with Shopify, so go get yourself a retail solution. Or people would say to me, oh, well, we love Touch Bistro. My husband has a restaurant and I have a spa. Can I use it in the spa? Can you modify it to work in a spa? And I'm like, I don't think that's a really good idea, right? Oh, just change the tables to like spa rooms and everything. Well, sure, and that's a segment that perhaps needs innovation, but you're going to have a bad experience. So I don't want you to become a customer just to churn and then tell me how you don't like the product when I told you it's not going to work for you in the first place. So we get that a lot, or we've had investors come and, well, we'll give you money if you go into this. It's a bigger category, and you can. And certainly during the pandemic, it was a hot topic. Again, I have investors that are like, why didn't you go into retail? Like, they're thriving. Well, they're thriving online, but they're not thriving in person, right? And now we all see the trend has reversed. Thank God stores are open, things are open, people are back shopping in person, thank God. So it's tough to say no, but you do have to, whether it's investor pressure, whether it's customer pressure, whether it's internal pressure, you have to ask yourself, what is the vision of what you're doing, the company's going, and does this fit into the long-term strategy? And maybe it does, maybe it doesn't.
Interesting. And Emily?
I think it definitely has to do with values and not being swayed by what everybody else is doing. Like, there is definitely an internal compass. I definitely lean a lot on faith. That's my personal journey, a lot of prayer. But I would also say timing is key. Sometimes it's a great opportunity. It might feel like the right partner. It might feel like the right thing, but the timing just feels like not now. And a very quick anecdote, I remember before the pandemic hit, I was doing these events and people were saying, it's great that you have all these women of color getting together in a room, but there are some really key decision makers in business and politics in the country that need to actually hear from these women, because this can be a real tipping point, that their voices could potentially shape bigger conversations. And so I had my eye on a particular conversation and I was like, okay, I think I want to do a How She Hustles event like this, and I want to invite the Prime Minister, for example. And I approached a partner and I said, let's work together on this. And I had written the plan, I had the date, I could see the event space, I knew who I wanted to invite, like it was all written down. And I submitted the proposal and they were like, yes, but. And the list of like all of their conditions just kept getting longer and longer and longer. And everything else, like I kept thinking, like, okay, I can make this concession, that concession, this concession, that concession. And by the end, I was just like, there's so many concessions, this actually isn't what I envisioned in the first place. So I said no. And I remember in that moment thinking, my no has to be an expression of my confidence in myself that a yes is going to come. Mm-hmm. And I tell you, I can feel like the goosebumps on my neck, because literally 2 years, almost to the day after I submitted that proposal, not only did I have my meeting with How She Hustles, with all women of color, it was under my own brand, and it was exactly the vision that I had in the first place.
That's great. All right, we don't have very much time, so we can do probably one quick question for the audience. I gave you time to prepare. Does anybody have one?
My voice is loud enough. Excuse me, I just ate something. Hi, I'm Pam Shanehouse, and I have a company called the Shanehouse Group. And what we do is we specialize in equity, diversity, and inclusion training and policy writing. And one of our, I'll use the business lingo, even though I didn't go to business school, but one of our value propositions is that we write government grants for our clients that will help them pay for whatever our costs are. I'm finding now, getting back into the swing of everything, that the word consultant seems to be, they are so allergic, it's as if they are wearing that t-shirt with that thing going through that I am allergic to a consultant. And then
sorry to interrupt. We have about 30 seconds left.
Okay, very, very quick. How do you get companies to understand that this is the time to plan versus planning after they've already executed and they haven't executed it properly? That's my question.
All right. Anybody got a?
I would say keep trying, Pamela. Like, you're not someone anyone is going to stop. So one company doesn't listen, next one, next one, next one, next one. I mean, this is exactly what we do. That's how anything is done. You just, you know, yeah, I was going to use the term, but you just got to be so annoying that eventually, if they're not opening the door door is broken down and Pamela's walked in. And then, what?
You sound like my children.
That's right. Learn. Think of your children when you're going. It's just all you need is one yes. When you get that one yes, we're Canadians. We like to follow people. So one yes, you just kind of then it kind of goes. Or get a U.S. customer, and then you'll get all the Canadians to say yes. Here's my money.
I'd also say show and tell. Yeah, very quickly, I would just say show and tell as well. Show and tell the things that you do well. You know, your customers become your champions, and so rather than you becoming the ambassador for your brand, have other people do that and show the impact of your work. And the other part of showing is show your potential clients when things don't go wrong. Here's a brand that didn't do what I'm offering you, so here's your opportunity to make sure you're not that brand.
All right, thanks very much for joining us today. Emily, Al, Alex, and Shannon, thanks very much for your insights.
Thank you.
All right, now I'd like to hand the stage over to my colleague, Vanmala Subramaniam, to moderate the next discussion.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Chris. And hi, everyone. That was really interesting. I'm Vanmala Subramaniam. I'm the Future of Work reporter with The Globe. I am happy to be moderating our next session, which is on strategies for building talent teams. We have a bunch of very interesting panelists. Joining me now are Nora Jenkins Townsend, founder and principal of Bright and Early, an HR consultancy firm. Mike Howanick, Senior Director of Client Journey Enablement at CIBC. Hi, Mike. And virtually we have Chanel Cesar, owner of Studio 67, a hair salon in downtown Toronto. Hi, Chanel. Looking forward to this. All right. Sorry, I'm just... So I guess I just want to start this off with each one of you telling me a little bit about what you do so we can kind of just center this conversation.
Yeah, so I think when I think about my job, like, I'm under no illusions that people wake up in the morning and are like, I can't wait to see what CIBC's got in store for me today. Like, they wake up, small business owners in particular, wake up with a goal. So it might be that they are opening a new location, hiring employee number 1 or employee number 100. They're expanding, or maybe they're just trying to survive given everything that's been going on. And so my team sort of comes to the table to help with solutions that help business owners meet those goals. So whether that's advice, products, offers, things for our advisors, which we're joined by many of them today, it's to help them help those small business owners achieve those goals.
Okay. I'm not sure if Chanel is there, but Nora, I'll go to you. Tell us a little bit about the company.
I've been in the HR space for about 10, 15 years, but actually I always like to call it sort of the weird or unconventional HR space. I've only worked for creative companies, startups, anyone who wants to approach the way that they manage people or grow people a little bit differently. So that's kind of my niche. 5 years ago, I started Bright and Early, and we are a small consultancy that works with creative companies and startups to help them build the first version of their people programs, especially if they want to do it in a really inclusive, interesting way. So some of them want to try to build totally flat organizations, or ones that are decolonizing the workplace, or perhaps they're just, received a lot of funding and need to scale and not ruin their culture. So we help them build everything from how do we hire, how do we onboard, how do we grow people, how do we pay people equitably. We help them build all those systems and policies for the first time.
Great. Chanel, tell us a little bit about the hair salon downtown.
So I'm a small business owner. feel as though all of my staff here are kind of their own business as well. So I am here to encourage and lead and help them grow their business under the umbrella of the studio.
To a whole bunch of things today, but maybe first I just want to talk a bit about the labor shortage we're experiencing in Canada. We went through a phase in the pandemic where we saw quite a few people quitting jobs, more so in the States than we did in Canada. That did kind of happen. But now in the last, say, 6 months or so, we're seeing a tight labor market. People are finding it hard to find work. So I guess I just want to ask you, Mike, maybe, from the perspective of your clients, like, what's that been like, trying to find talent in this kind of labor market in Canada?
I think small business owners are feeling it from two sides of the quote-unquote great resignation, I guess, as it's being branded. I think on the one hand, when you're in a tight labor market, it's a candidate's market, right? So you're seeing people apply for roles. They potentially have multiple irons in the fire, and they have the ability to walk because there are just that many more opportunities there. So I think for small business owners, that's a challenge that either they haven't faced before, or it's been so long since they faced it that they're having to develop sort of a different way of going about to make sure that they get great candidates. The other side that they're facing is that, as with any sort of financial crisis, or in this case a pandemic, it spurs a whole bunch of new business startups. And so what you also have is that, if you can call them sort of legacy business owners that existed pre-pandemic, they're not only competing in a tight labor market, as I just described, but they're also competing against new business owners that are joining the small business ranks and are really invigorated. So you're talking about people that were potentially working in a corporate job. They resigned, they said, I've had enough of this. I want to take that hobby, that side gig or whatever it was, and go for it and turn it into a business. And so I think for business owners, like I said, that have been around for a couple of years, I think they're feeling the pinch on both sides in terms of being able to attract talent and then also compete with this sort of invigorated class of startups that are making their way into the market.
Right. Chanel, what has been your experience with trying to recruit? Either new, have you gone through that in the last 2 years? What people leaving and you have to find new talent? How was that like?
Yeah, so I think during the pandemic, scientists didn't really have a home anymore. So they could just up and move to wherever was closest to where they lived or another opportunity. And so for me, really offering things like a safe space to grow, education, a lot of collaboration has been truly important in acquiring and keeping really good talent, because that's what they are. They're the talent. So I've been reaching out to all different kinds of means for strategies. One of them definitely being social media. That I found to be able to offer more than just the financial aspect to a business being the most important for me to keep staff.
Okay, that's interesting. Nora, how has that been like for you? Any specific examples you have about advising clients on what to do in the face of trying to recruit in this type of labor market?
Yeah, so my background being in tech and most of my clients being in tech, I feel like I've been operating in a tight candidate market for a long time.
That is true.
So years and years, for years and years pre-pandemic, you hear about all these, amazing perks that these tech companies have. They're doing your laundry, they're dropping off your kids, they're giving you the moon, right? And they don't do that out of the kindness of their hearts. It's because it's really hard to hire technical talent. And I feel like a lot of industries are kind of catching up to that right now. But in the past, where meeting those needs and providing an amazing work experience used to be about those kind of flashy perks, now it's about something more personal, and that's what candidates are looking for. So Emily was talking a little bit about this in the last session, but I think people are looking for a really human integrated work experience, and that's what I'm advising clients on right now. So it's not about obviously, because a lot of them are not going to offices at all, it's not about ping pong tables and foosball and kombucha kegs or something like that. It's about flexibility. It's about, return ships or flexibility for parents. It's about, hybrid or totally remote work. And just about like, how can I take care of somebody as a human? And then it was something that related to values connection was also mentioned, and that's really important as well. In a candidates market where they have a lot of options, money is one thing, and we can talk about that after, like the compensation market is moving and changing so quickly. But it's also really about, do I feel connected to the mission and values of this company? Are they providing an inclusive workspace and a human workspace? And candidates are jumping ship and selecting opportunities, not just for money, but for those human values as well.
That's a really interesting point. Mike, do you find that when you're either on the employee or the employer side, when you're talking to people, what are employees looking for? Are they looking for some sort of, I guess, this is my value system and I want my company to represent that?
Well, definitely. And I think like the word that gets bantered around a lot is sort of purpose-led organizations. But I feel like too often, maybe we don't look under the hood of what that means. When I think of purpose, whether it's at CIBC or a small business on Main Street, I think there's a couple different ways you can go. It could be your purpose is to sort of win, compete, like that's very traditional, and I think we know that. Make an impact, whether on the world or more locally on your community. Help others, like specifically helping people of a certain class or group. And then lastly, innovation. And so I think whether you lean into one of those exclusively or you try and sort of put a deposit in each of them, so to speak, I think that's what you have to show up with, particularly given what we're seeing more so in the States, but I think it's going to come here as well. We're seeing a lot of older workers naturally either retire at their sort of natural retirement age or jump to retirement after this ordeal over the last 2 years. And so what's backfilling those roles is Generation Z, right? And so I think to show up for Generation Z, you have to show up with that purpose and with those values that I mentioned. And that starts like right from the job description, right? Like the job description that got Gen X and elder millennials like myself interested in roles 10, 15 years ago is not the job description that is going to get someone that's part of Generation Z to say, that's a company I could see myself working at.
So, Nora, and I'll get to Chanel in a second, but Nora, on that note, have you noticed this generation gap as well with the demands of, like, what are the priorities that younger workers want as opposed to workers who are in an intermediate level who've been recruited like myself like 12, 13 years ago? How is it different?
Yeah, so one quote that I've seen around that I love is Gen Z doesn't dream of labor. So they are not sitting there necessarily dreaming of, when they think about what they want to do with their life, they're not necessarily sitting there thinking about like their career path as the number one thing, but behind that. And I think it's very North American in a way to think of like when you meet someone, you say like, what do you do as the first question? And in other parts of the world, it's not so much that way, and we're so used to it here. And I feel like Gen Z is going to move in the other direction of that. I think that they're like decentering work a little bit, but when it comes to work, they still want to do a great job, but they want to be value aligned with their company. So I think if you're expecting them to kind of show up and drink the proverbial Kool-Aid and like wear the t-shirts the way that millennials did with the company logos and rah, like they're kind of not here for that. It doesn't mean that they're not excited to do a good job, but it's a little different.
Yeah. Chanel, I want to ask you about your own, as a business owner, your own strategies in retaining the talent you have. Like, what are some of the what's some advice you can share to the room?
For retaining the talent, honestly, it's changing your mindset to going from I'm in a small business because I'm going to make a bunch of money to I'm in a small business because I'm going to offer opportunity. And opportunity as a commodity is it's essential. And I think in all generations, but definitely Generation Z, like they are looking for opportunity. Like they will work as hard for you as you will work for them. And again, I see with social media, like I'm not even just talking about the studio or the businesses social media, but like really putting in the effort to work on their social media, to work on what is their portfolio, to make sure that they exceed in all the areas of their life. Once they have their career kind of under understood, then they can branch out and start, and that's what they really want to do. They want balance.
I want to get back to the money part of all this. We're talking about small businesses here, and they are constrained in a budget to a certain extent. So how do you get the best talent as a small business when you're competing, especially in this country, with very large established oligopolies? You know? So actually, go ahead, Mike.
I think that I think if I could leave one message with small business owners in particular, it's that alternative sources of funding, whether you call that grants or government money, that has to become part of your business plan. And it sounds obvious, and if you're in the tech sector and stuff like that, it's like that's always been part of the DNA of how you get one of those off the ground. But even for a retailer or a restaurant, that has to become a component of your business plan. And to not do that is essentially leaving money on the table. So when we look at sort of this evolution of government funding over the pandemic, it started with these big banner programs to the tune of billions of dollars, like the emergency wage subsidy, HAZCAP loans. Most recently, I was a little upset by the headlines that were dropping last Friday, where sort of the last of one of those hiring programs, the Canada Hiring Recovery Benefit, has basically come to its end. But I think what a lot of business owners are potentially missing out on is that programs like that one still are allowing for retroactive application up to 180 days in the past. So if I was a small business owner and I was facing this shortage, this tight labor market that we've been discussing, I would be tapping into those programs and just bringing extra funds into my business. I wouldn't go looking for an extra $5,500 or $5 on my business credit card. I'd be tapping into the free money that's still out there, the subsidies that are available, to potentially become a little bit more competitive about bringing in those roles and overcoming those objections from applicants where they said, well, I like your offer, but this other business is offering me X plus whatever. Yeah. I think that's a way to get extra money into the business at no interest, no expectation of repayment, and get your business back up to where you want it to be or where it was pre-pandemic.
When it comes to, I guess, figuring out sources of funding for a small business, I'm totally veering off track here, but there's so many programs out there, and they're municipal, provincial, federal, and just like, it can get confusing for small business owners. So what kind of tips do you tell clients who are kind of looking around for money and just don't know where to start? I'm thinking of someone really new who has just started a business, 3-4 employees, that kind of demographic.
Yeah, so that's not totally my area of expertise, but I do have some tips for kind of moving beyond the money if you've gotten all your grants and you still can't pay as much as Google. And I can tell you a little bit about what we do as a small business as well. I have a team of about 15, and I can't necessarily compete with Google on salaries either, although we're fair, of course. So I think just you really need to have a marketing plan for hiring as well as for your business as well. Know what your employee value proposition is. So, are you going to, in my case, I can provide my team access into, hundreds of different businesses to see how they work and they grow and how decisions are made there instead of just one. So it's an amazing growth opportunity, and know that and sell that. Have amazing job descriptions, have a great careers page. On our job descriptions, we make sure to transparently include the salary, we include the growth levels and plan and what they can expect in terms of career progression. We even recorded and included videos from people that are in the role that we're currently hiring for about what their day-to-day is like. So they get to meet their colleague, kind of get the vibe, and hear from somebody who's doing that job what it's like. And through things like that, as long as they're authentic and unique to your business, you can really stand out. Like, people will share those on social media. They'll say like, oh, this is really interesting. They'll share it with their friends. They'll be more encouraged to apply. So when, obviously leverage, money as much as you can. We don't want to underpay people. You want to have, do all you can from a financial perspective, of course. Yeah. But I think there's ways to stand out beyond.
Yeah. Chanel, I wanted to ask you, you use social media quite a bit as a recruiting tool for new talent. Can you kind of walk me through an example of how that works, or, just how successful that tool has been for you in finding people?
So to be honest, I've tried looking on like hiring forums and things like that, but nothing has been as successful as advertising online. I couldn't agree with the last speaker more. It's about offering. It's about being transparent about what you're offering, and the more transparency you have, the more people will actually share with their friends or know somebody that, oh, hey, is looking for more of this rather than the financial aspect. And not, again, everybody's paid fair, but a lot of times people are looking for those types of connections. And in business, I think it's very quickly moving and obviously moving from what you have in your portfolio to who you know and how you know them.
Just to build on Chanel's thought as well, I think another currency besides actual dollars on salary is speed right now. Like if we can all agree to one thing at this summit when we leave, like down with the job application process that involves like the case study or the other sort of three-ring circus that sometimes applicants have to go through. I'm not saying it's not good for perhaps certain roles, but it's not uncommon to see someone get into your hiring pipeline, and then if you're sort of putting them through, this callback, I want you to meet with this person, I want you to go over there, I want you to show me a portfolio. It's not wrong to ask for those things, but asking for them in a sort of tighter sequence so that your end-to-end hiring journey is something more like a couple days or weeks as opposed to a couple weeks or months could be the difference between landing that ideal candidate or having them come back to you partway through your elongated process and tell you, someone else just made me an offer and it's too good to say no to.
Right. On that point, one of the things, I remember writing a story about this a couple of years ago. One of the challenges, small businesses do sometimes have is with the talent retention is compensation, obviously. And so they come into an organization, say a family-owned business, they're there for a couple of years, then the market rate goes up for and they look around and they ask their boss, hey, can I get a raise? And the boss is like, well, I just can't afford that. Then they leave. So that's this high turnover. I guess I just want to, is that post-pandemic, has this dynamic remained, or has anything changed about being able to retain talent right now that didn't exist prior?
I think what you're saying was true then, it's true now. I could see it getting tougher given the inflation that we're all facing and the expectation that the greater wages and salaries arrive to compensate for this inflation. I think though that, like I said, there's other forms of currency beyond just dollars. So like particularly when you think about Gen Z, gone are the days where like my generation is just looking to like put in 5 to 7 years, show that on a resume, be like, I'm so loyal, you gotta hire me because I put in the time here. They almost look at it, Gen Z, that is, as building a talent stack, where even if you're able to, incrementally raise their wages or salary in line with what your business is able to handle, but you're giving them those extra training opportunities, talent opportunities, shifting their role where maybe as opposed to always being client-facing, you're pulling them more into the operations of the business and helping train them how to actually run a business of their own one day. That, like I was mentioning with time, is a currency unto itself that can help combat that. But when it comes to hard dollars and cents, I'd return to my previous point. There is money out there, and to your previous point about sort of where to start, because I agree with your point, there's money everywhere, but it's kind of feels like it's hidden and there's a lot of different doors you can go through. I think, especially in light of what we're seeing with the federal government, where the government we have is going to be around still now until I think 2025. Yeah. They've been pretty clear about their priorities in terms of the kind of grants that they're going to give to businesses of all sizes, including small businesses. It's typically ones that are working on anything to do with the environment and improvement of the environment, digital adoption and innovation, and diversity and inclusion. So knowing that that is going to be the government's priorities from a funding and grants perspective for the next 3 years and change, people should be talking to as Pamela, right? People should be, everyone here should be getting Pamela's business card to write money for grants in line with particularly the D&I topic, but those other ones that I mentioned as well, which is how you'll get that extra cash into your business to be able to afford maybe not even a full-time or an ongoing increase to salary, but even one-time bonuses to help sort of, put some ice on some of these wounds that we're feeling from, $10 soup and $200 work outfits as it costs now. I think those can go a long way.
Go ahead, Nora.
I was going to say as well, just some direct advice for those who are running and managing small businesses when it comes to compensation is that you have to be proactive and communicative in an ongoing way. You cannot hire someone and then just keep them at the same salary and never have a discussion about it and wait for them to bring it up. A lot of people won't bring it up; they'll just leave. So you have to be proactive and you have to go look at market rates at least every 6 months and adjust your salary bands. Have salary bands for common 1 roles. But every 6 months, go and look at the market proactively, and even if there's small adjustments, make those proactive adjustments. And then, clearly communicate that that's something that you do. So maybe in your employee handbook, it can read, we look at market rates and make adjustments every 6 months around performance review time or whenever you do it, just so they know that it does happen. But it's not something that you can just let sit. And this is also another way to be inclusive as well from a policy and process perspective, because studies have shown that candidates from diverse backgrounds, they may be less likely or feel less comfortable asking for a pay increase. And you don't want to have a culture where it's the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? It should be fair and equitable, and being proactive about compensation increases is a way to do that.
Actually, Nora, I wanted to just, since we're on the topic of actual recruiting, could you kind of share some advice about conducting interviews and the hiring process, especially when it comes to trying to get a diverse pool of candidates?
Yeah, so don't rely on applications. Definitely go out there and do your own sourcing as well. I found that to be very effective in diversifying candidate pools. You also want to make sure maybe that you're partnering with different organizations out there from different communities that you want to recruit from. Some of them have job boards, some of them have hiring fairs, virtual or otherwise. So you need to do the work and put yourself out there. You can't just kind of post and pray. And then it's not just about bringing these candidates in, but ensuring they have a great experience as well. So make sure that you have a well-designed interview process, that it's equitable, meaning that people are asked the same questions, given the same assignments. It's very objective. We're trying to remove all subjectivity. No, would I like to sit next to this person on an airplane? Kind of no weird little tests, things like that. And yeah, make sure that you're putting your commitment to diversity and inclusion front and center in your interview process, whether it be in your job description, whether it be in transparently sharing, the salary, the process, things like that. Yeah, there's a lot that you can do there for sure. But I think just making sure you have trained interviews, a solid process, and that you're reaching out yourself and putting the time in.
Chanel or Mike, do you have anything to add on the how conducting interviews, hiring front? Any kind of advice you would like to give the room?
It comes back to me to the time thing, which I don't want to beat that dead horse too much, but if I was to give practical advice, a lot part of what my job was in a prior line of work before CIBC was around mapping client journeys, where you sort of looked at everything the client went through and sort of scrutinized each step. That same methodology and approach can be applied to the hiring journey and the interview journey. And I think as a small business owner, putting yourself in the shoes of an applicant and taking it right from the moment they find out about your brand on Facebook to the moment they see your posting on Indeed to the moment they submit, get that call back. If you scrutinize every step, I guarantee as a business owner, you will find opportunities to say, well, that can combine with this, we don't really need that anymore, so why would we make them do it? And right from the gate, you can show sort of respect and appreciation for the applicant's time.
Yeah.
And that's only going to sort of further enamor them with your business by showing that you take their time seriously. You're not here to sort of lead them around and around in a process of your own making.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just throw in that I definitely agree on the speed front. So I also co-edit a small digital publication about the future of work, and we do this kind of work diary series where it's anonymous accounts of people doing interesting things at work. And we did one with a software engineer who decided to quit their job and interview at a few different places, and what was that journey like, and which offer did they take and why, what were the offers, etc. And it was interesting to see into those processes as well. The larger companies, like Meta was one of the companies that they had interviewed at, and they have their process down to a week. From application or reach out to full offer. And it's just really hard for small businesses to compete with that as well, because you're pulled in directions. It's you're the one running payroll, you're the one doing this. So it's hard, but it's good to know what you're up against in terms of speed. That's how fast companies are moving.
We have about 10 minutes left. One more question, and then I'm going to open it up to the audience. What is your advice about implementing a hybrid work strategy right now? I think most businesses have kind of settled on hybrid, but Nora, maybe you can start, and Mike, you can follow.
Yeah, so I think it's difficult. You have to be really conscious about designing it. You can't just say, okay, well, some people can come in and if they want to, and other people won't. You really have to design around the inevitability that in-person interactions are going to happen, that people who are online only or remote are not going to be a part of. There's going to be those side conversations in the kitchen or at the water cooler. So you need to have like really kind of hard-lined and practiced, policies and ways of doing things where, decisions are not being made in those situations, and that, we have ways where we really can collaborate. So there's digital solutions for that for sure. But yeah, I think it really is just about like making sure that you're giving an equal experience to people, whether they're remote or in person, and nobody's missing out either way. Pre-pandemic, I would hear a lot from people, from companies that did offer, remote, that sometimes the remote employees would progress a bit slower in their careers, like they would feel a bit passed over for promotions, or, they would have less access to information. So in some ways, despite the freedom, it was less desirable that way. So I think just really having strong policies where, if a conversation, and you have to, as a leader, really promote this, like if somebody's trying to have a side conversation with you, like, oh no, we should have it in this way, or we should share it in this way. So just being really conscious about that and over communicating is one thing to think of.
Mike, do you have any thoughts on preserving the culture of a workplace in light of hybrid work? I think the previous panel touched on that quite a bit.
I think it's possible. Like I don't dispute that it's daunting perhaps at first, but I think it is absolutely possible. And I think to the extent that you're a small business owner that can support hybrid work, and that's obviously not true of them all depending on the nature of the business, but I think small businesses actually have an advantage over the CIBCs and the Metas and the other big organizations of the world, where as a small business, if you know your business and you know that I can support 2 remote days per week and 3 in the store and the office, I would actually lead with that as part of the job negotiation process, because what you'll find right now, if you were to apply to some tech companies or larger companies, they're kind of half in, half out. Like they'll tell you how it is right now, but they're very much hedging. They don't want to say what it's going to look like a year from now, maybe even 6 months from now. If you're a small business and you can commit to supporting hybrid with caveats around, we're going to review it every year, every 6 months, and potentially make adjustments, you've potentially short-circuited some of your competition in the larger business space when it comes to leading with a really strong hybrid job offer proposition, as opposed to these larger companies that are not so sure and don't want to overcommit themselves in the near term.
Very interesting. I'm going to open it up to the audience on the floor, and then we'll do the virtual audience. Anyone has any questions for the panelists?
Can I just add a couple of things?
Yes, and then...
have a question down there? Perfect, I'm not saying anything.
we'll come back to you. Yes, right over there. Go ahead. Yep.
Sorry.
Hi, so my name is Kaylee Flynn. I'm a partner with Health Plus Insurance. So we're a insurance company specializing in benefits for small business and freelancers. And so one thing I noticed is that insurance benefits weren't really discussed. So I guess my question is if you have any thoughts on the importance of insurance, health insurance, particularly for mental health benefits or wellness benefits for small business, because I know they're kind of standard for a lot of larger companies, but maybe not quite so much for really small businesses.
Such an excellent question. Go ahead, Nora.
Yeah, so I think that's really, really important, especially on the mental health side after the past couple of years and just in general. I think, the pandemic has been hard on everyone, but I think also in the past few years, there's become like less of a stigma on talking about mental health at work, and then, employers are providing more on that. Personally, at Bright and Early, we offer access to therapy and a budget for that is aside from our health benefits as well. But when it comes to designing your benefits, like with your broker, you can definitely design a friendly plan that way. I'm a fan personally of having like a generous health spending account or HSA on top of drug coverage and things like that, versus having those plans. A lot of plans have like $200 for this type of paramedical, and then this and that, meaning like $200 for therapy, $200 for physio. Most people actually use like a lot of one or two categories instead of like a tiny bit of all of them. So just having kind of a broad amount of money that they can spend in areas that are important to them, I think is a really great strategy. And then just offering benefits outside of even kind of brokered ones is great too. Like offer them access to a platform. There's a lot of like video therapy platforms, and what I like about them as well is
and kind of the advent of video therapy is that people, especially maybe from diverse backgrounds, can find a therapist that matches their experience or kind of specialty that they're looking for, and they don't have to be in the same city. And yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting things you can do, and it's an important point to make.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is that apart from adding it as a benefit to being to running a business, I think it's important that small business owners themselves, the principals, take full advantage of it, and to the extent that it's they're comfortable sharing, letting employees know that it's not just available to them, but it's something that they're taking advantage of. The CFIB just put out a survey result a couple weeks ago that 2/3 of small business owners feel like they're closer than they've ever been to burnout, and for small business employees, it's about 50% feel that way. And so I think apart from having it as a benefit of joining a given firm or a given small business, it's part of that modeling as a small business owner to show your employees that this is something you understand, it's a conversation you're comfortable with, and importantly, there are options, real dollars available to assist with mental health beyond just the sort of stereotype of like the small business owner of years long past, where it's like, well, I'm sorry you're feeling that way, like pull up your socks and like let's just get through that. Like those days are gone behind us. We don't want to hear that anymore, especially when options like yours are out there for small businesses.
Yeah, I also want to share one practice that we do on our own team as well, called out of tens, which is kind of unique. So every time we have a team meeting, so we usually have a weekly one, we talk about, how is everyone as a person out of 10? And you don't need to explain why. You can, but like basically anything under like a 6 is pretty bad, right? And we're a small team, so there's an advantage there, and we're able to say, okay, if somebody has a lot on their plate and they're coming and saying like, I'm a 6 for whatever reason, or I'm a 5 right now, or I'm a 4, we're able to come together as a team and say, okay, why don't we take a couple of projects off this person's plate and give them to somebody who is feeling like 9 or 10 out of 10 and able to show up a bit more right now. And we have conversations around that to really normalize it as well, because there is mental health from the perspective of having a mental health condition or something like that. But even if you don't have something like that, we need to normalize at work that people have peaks and valleys. It may have something to do with something going on in your life. It may just be like, hey, I'm foggy this week for whatever reason. But I think humanizing that and having conversations around it is just really important, outside of the conversations around disorders or disease.
Diagnoses.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions from the floor? We have one here, and then I'll go to you at the back. Go ahead. Oh, oops.
Thank you for the great session. Just a question I had for small business owners. What are the benefits that they should provide to the employees so they can retain them or either help them grow? Thank you.
Nora, want to just, yeah.
Sure, yeah, so make sure that you have your basic benefits in place. That's just table stakes. You want to have your health benefits, your drug coverage, your HSA, like I just mentioned, all of those things, and your leave coverage. And I would just really have some of your general HR systems in place. So map out, how employees can grow at the company. Map out what your policies are, and share those from the beginning. Think about what your values are as a company. Think about how you're going to create an inclusive company. And, you can put all this in a really amazing handbook. And, handbooks used to be just here's a list of legalese policies. But the ones that I like to make, they are really giving mission, vision, history. Why are we excited to be here? What are the working norms of here? How do I move up in the company? What should my relationship with what should I expect from my relationship with my manager? How often do we review compensation? And just make something really comprehensive and exciting that way. Other than that, when you're looking at benefits, there's no kind of or perks. There's no exact answer for every company. It really depends on your values, the type of people you want to recruit and retain, and the types of behaviors that you want to encourage as well. So you could also lean into your brand as well. I worked with a travel tech company that was having trouble hiring people because they were B2B and people hadn't really heard of them. So they decided to really lean into work here if you love to travel. So they put in these special perks around they gave everyone $3,000 a year towards a trip, and they give them extra time off and like different things like that. And they use the budget to do that they might have put towards like other types of perks and benefits. So then they really, instead of kind of blending in with what everyone had, people who love to travel would see that and say like, this is the workplace for me. So really leaning into like who you are as a company and what you value and what you do.
Okay, I'm going to take one question. We have a minute left, and then we'll get the answer, and that's about our time.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
So Vanmala, you asked a question to Mike and Nora, and I think it was a great question. I think Mike commented on HASCAP loans and stuff like that, different loan applications that clients can apply for. And I think it was a great question. You kind of asked Mike and Nora, and I don't think they really had the answer to the question as, where do clients go? There's so many different options. And so, just so you guys know, my name's Jonathan. I'm a business advisor with CIBC. And I think your direct answer here, not only CIBC is a sponsor here, but I think your direct answer there is to go to your bank, speak to your advisor if you have one. The bank has the training, the support in order to support you and your businesses. I think that should be your first point of contact. And then you can look at your accountant or your lawyer. There's different options from there. But I think to that point, just really quick, I know we're running out of time. I think your first point of contact should be your bank, and if you have a business advisor, that should be your point of contact. If anybody has any questions, I'll be out these doors, happy to help out with anything you need.
That's excellent. Well, thank you. We are unfortunately quite out of time here. But I really want to thank you both, Nora and Mike. Unfortunately, we lost Chanel about 2/4 into halfway through the panel. We will have a quick networking break. There are refreshments outside. It's about 20 minutes. I think the next panel starts at 2:50. But thank you again so much. Thank you.